So we're a team of creative minds that invents and produce mindful online learning crafted with scholarship, creativity, and quality. And we accomplish this by pushing the boundaries of learning and design in order to ensure that knowledge is accessible and engaging for everyone. And since our inception in 2014, our productions have engaged over 1 million learners in 167 countries around the world. And we basically believe if you can teach it online. And at Onlia, we figured out ways to teach really diverse subject matter and do it well. And so at this time, I would like to hand it off to William Fritzberg, our lead design strategist at Onlia, who is going to offer some practical user experience and learner experience tips regarding course design. So please take it away, William.
Thank you both very much. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. In this webinar, we're going to explore how navigation can make or break your online course and offer some practical UX and LX tips you can start readily applying in your courses. A little bit about myself and my background. I have a master's in design research from the Elisava School of Design in Barcelona and a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Film Production from UBC. Since 2008, I have been actively involved in the design, production, and promotion of educational content. I have held key roles on over 100 projects and held a variety of positions, including that of business operations and strategic planning. In 2018, I joined Onlia and led the design and production of several large courses where, in addition to instructional design methods, we added capacity in advanced strategy and usability testing. This work built upon Onlia's learner-centric philosophy and led to the development of LX Labs, our newest branch committed to learner experience design, strategy, and research. This creates opportunities for us to share our knowledge and expertise more openly and to work with both organizations and individuals alike. We've learned through our years of building online courses that the earlier design strategy and research happens, the more impact it has, the better experience it is for learners, and the more cost effective it is for course creators. So where are we headed today? We'll start our journey with defining online course boundaries. Then we will demystify some of the jargon and relevant terminology with design definitions, followed by a case for why this is important with tech expectations in 2021. And then I will lay out some strategies with 3 pillars for better design decisions. And last, but definitely not least, we'll finish with a knowledge home tour. So what makes an online course in 2021? An online classroom remote learning approach, a series of live sessions led by a teacher, typically with some homework, a hybrid asynchronous-synchronous approach, where learners are required to do some asynchronous work on their own and then meet with an instructor for more active elements, or a fully asynchronous self-paced approach, where learners progress at their own pace through the content and only engage with instructors or other students in discussion forums. So I'm going to ask a question that I would like for you to answer in the chat. What do these teaching approaches have in common? And we're going to give everyone about 30 seconds to add a response. And yeah. Nice. They involve a screen, a virtual platform, communication between learners and instructors, self-directed engagement, flexible with the learner, motivation. Awesome. Those are all great answers and are yes. Well, regardless of how learning takes place, all of these examples require a platform to serve as a home base to arrive at and come back to throughout a learner's journey. This is why when making design decisions around course navigation and structure, we often make an analogous comparison to physical architecture. What if your course was a home that you could visit in person? What would it feel like? What style would the architecture be? Would it be easy to find the front door? Once inside, would it be clear where to go? But before we dig into that analogy further, let's take a step back and talk about some key concepts that will help us understand and recognize the importance of making decisions around course navigation and structure. At Onlia, we put a lot of emphasis on design of our learning experiences, but what does that really mean? According to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, the essential meaning of design is to plan and make decisions about something that is being built or created, to plan and make something for a specific use or purpose, and to think of something such as a plan, to plan something in your mind. I really like the positioning of this definition about design in being effectively about planning and making decisions at a high level. Design is a vast discipline touching about every part of our world, from the way cities are built to the products we use every day. But they all start with thinking of something, planning, and making decisions. And whether we realize it or not, when we are creating, we are making choices about design. Now, for another question to the audience, where you can add your comment in the chat. Can anyone tell me what's special about this picture? There are two paths. Thank you, Richard. Go left. Yeah, the road less taken. Yeah, humans always take the most efficient path. Great, Margot. Shortcut. Fantastic, Greg. Distance. Thank you, Mike. Excellent. All right. So you may develop something with a particular intention in mind, but find that real user behavior doesn't always line up with your expectations. These are commonly referred to as desire paths or shortcuts that a user will take to get to their goal. With designing online learning experiences, there are three specialized forms of design that intersect with a given learner's journey with a course. CX, customer experience, the experience a person has with your brand from initial awareness and research to conversion and retention. UX, user experience, the integrated set of experiences an end user has with a company, its services and products from first usage to help, service, and maintenance. And LX, learner experience, the process of creating learning experiences that enable the learner to achieve their desired outcome in a human-centered, goal-oriented way, and encompasses many subdisciplines such as interaction design, UX, graphic design, game design, instructional design, cognitive psychology, experiential learning, educational sciences, and neuroscience, all in the service of the learner. The key term here to remember is experience design. No matter the designation of customer, user, or learner, the focus is on developing human-centered experiences. And these don't just begin and end with your course. Two other terms of note are touch point, any interaction a customer has with your product, brand, business, or service that might alter the way they feel about it, and channel, where the interaction takes place. For example, email, a search engine result, a review, your website, or your course page. Now that we've established that humans make decisions when creating things, and those decisions don't always line up with what users do, let's talk about what's at stake. In 2021, most people on the planet have a computer in their pocket. This computer has applications designed by some of the best minds in the world. They are inundated with UX design patterns day in and day out, and come to expect certain things to work the same when they arrive at your course. In a recent trend report by Simon Kempt, in collaboration with We Are Social, Data Reportal, and Hootsuite, he shares there are 5.72 billion unique mobile users around the world, which means that 2/3 of all people on Earth right now have a mobile phone. When something does not work, A resourceful person may figure out a workaround, but the majority of people will give up and not come back. Bad design can turn away a customer at any point in their relationship with your course, even before they've signed up or logged on. UX pioneer researcher Jacob Nielsen has long studied the relationship between users and websites. He says, the first 10 seconds of the page visit are critical for users' decision to stay or leave. The probability of leaving is very high during these first few seconds because users are extremely skeptical, having suffered countless poorly designed web pages in the past. This means that design decisions you make surrounding your course equal critical learning infrastructure. So how do we get from bad decision making to good decision making? Here are 3 pillars for better design decisions. Learn from your learners. Engaging learners is a sure way to identify blind spots and opportunities. We recommend creating personas, conducting user research, involving your learner in decision making with co-design, and testing often. Discovering what delights your learners can lead to positive feedback. Employ design patterns and principles. Using a style guide helps ensure your brand is consistent across all channels. Jacob Nielsen's 10 usability heuristics is a goldmine of proven strategies to mitigate navigation errors. Using design navigation patterns your learners are familiar with will help them focus on your content. When presented with a new navigation design, they will have to learn that too. Instructional design principles can ensure your content is focused and not adding to cognitive overload. And lastly, LMS optimization will help reduce potential user traps. For those unfamiliar with the term LMS, an LMS is a learning management system, or essentially a CMS for managing your learning content. And the third pillar, bake accessibility into your work is easier the earlier you do it. Many people don't realize that screen readers rely on alt text and appropriate use of headers for page navigation. Alt text is an alternative to images that describes what an image is for a screen reader. Headers provide the structure of the page. You may see in a text editor, even a Word document, header 1, header 2, header 3, all the way to header 6. The actual numbers here are important because they structure the page so that a screen reader can jump between the headers in a hierarchical way. Plain language is especially important for learners who are English second language. Using a resource like Web Content Accessibility Guidelines can help you identify opportunities for improvement and compliance, and responsive web design ensures users can access your course on whichever device they choose. Now for the home tour portion of the webinar and our first stop, finding the address. How prospective learners find out about your course can come from a wide variety of channels. Some common ones are word of mouth, social media, search engine results, AdWords, an email, a course marketplace, or even your own LinkedIn. Not all prospects will approach your course site the same way, but many do research and will look at your other channels for credibility. Things to look out for here are: is your branding consistent across all these channels? Does your messaging speak to your audience efficiently and effectively? This affects everything from understanding your sales proposition to SEO, search engine optimization, how well your course ranks in search engine results. When people encounter different branding or language from one channel to another, they may wonder if it's the same company, is the company doing well, and each time they encounter this, they'll be thinking about it instead of your content. At the second stop of our Knowledge Home Tour, we've arrived at your course landing page. the exterior view of your house from outside. This is the moment to capture a prospective audience's attention and hold it. Many course landing pages use the funnel marketing approach to direct visitors. This usually involves a sequence of scrollable content that starts with a hook that captures the problem your audience is facing and then offers a solution, testimonials, pricing, and a call to action. It is extremely important not to overdo a course marketing page. While top menu navigation is a common design pattern, having too many menu items leading to separate pages means a visitor may get lost before they figured out what you do or what you want them to know. Also important here is to make sure that it's easy to find the buttons for sign up and login. This helps both your visitor and returning customer to quickly get started or access the course itself. Once a customer decides to sign up or buy your course, the account process should be painless. Email receipts are a good practice and way to welcome your learners. Things to watch out for? Make sure your email has the same branding as your course and clearly outlines how to start the course on day one. Also note, not everyone reads the instructions. Make sure this information is in more than one place. Okay, now on to home tour stop number 3. We've signed in, we've logged in, and now we're opening the course for the first time. This layout can vary widely depending on the LMS you use. For our examples today, we will be showing D2L and Moodle, two popular LMS platforms, with content from programs we completed for 2 major Canadian institutions. The first thing that you'll notice here is that it starts with a welcome message from the instructor and an explanation of how to begin your course. This welcome message does a great job of giving an overview of the LMS menu structure, helping new learners understand how to use this particular navigation system. A different example of how to structure a course homepage is to use a more graphical approach. This program in particular was delivered in a hybrid trickle style, where each asynchronous content was made available to learners to complete before attending a synchronous session. Because of the nature of the program, a journey theme was a strong element, and even if the content wasn't available yet, showing the adventures ahead was part of the design. You will also notice that we've used custom graphic design and illustration to separate one section of the course from another. As this was a hybrid asynchronous course, making the live session Zoom link easy to find was critical. Our solution was to put the Zoom link in more than one location, so that a learner looking for the link quickly beforehand could find it at the bottom of the start menu on the left-hand side there, in the syllabus in the middle, and along with the dates of when the live sessions were, or in the course content itself. We also used text formatting deliberately to highlight and break up important course content for easier navigation. Now on to home tour stop number 4, the rooms or coursework. While table of content approaches are common, they do a good job of laying out the content efficiently. Aspects to pay attention to here are using consistent naming conventions such as 1.0, 1.1, 1.2, dividing up content around introductions, topics, summary, references, completion checklists. Make it easy to find these pages again. On the right, I've included an example page where we see the same banner we saw on the course homepage and a flag icon next to introduction. Banners and icons can serve as signposts for the learner, and if used consistently, can prepare them for what to expect later in the course when they get to a particular section. Another content design navigation element is a callout box, where using a background color along with an illustrative element and a button can indicate something important or an activity in contrast to general course content. A couple things to note here. The big red button with the words download download, think well, learn well diagram is an example of a descriptive button. If this had just said download, it would be unclear what the learner was being prompted to do. This is also helpful for screen reader users who won't have the visual context to know where a link may lead. Also critical is to set any links in the course to open in a new window. If a link opens in the same window, it will take the learner out of the course and make it more difficult for them to get back in and disrupt their learning. And for the final stop on the home tour, the return trip. Many LMS platforms and even course authoring tools like Storyline offer the ability for learners to return to where they left off. These features can be really attractive as long as there's a way to skip it if you're returning for a different purpose. The main thing here is to watch out for on the return trip is if you've added a course, tour, or introduction for the first time learner, make sure that it doesn't pop up each time they visit. If there are live course announcements that you want to share on the course homepage, look for elegant ways to make sure the information is available without the learners having to wade through it every time they open the course. Other features that can be helpful for learners are visible indicators of progress, such as a progress bar or the ability to check off work as they go along. In some cases, a checkmark feature may be used to trigger new content when a trickle approach is used. In this case, it is really important to explicitly tell the learners about this requirement so they don't get stuck and end up wondering why the content is not available to them after they've completed the coursework. So to recap what we've just gone over, every touch point counts. How learners find your course is as important as your content. Your course landing page may be your first and last impression. Keep it simple. Make it easy for learners to hear your sales proposition and learn how to sign up. Account setup should be painless, and emails should direct the learner back to the course. Explain how the course works even if your learners don't read it. When they get stuck, they shouldn't have to look far for the instructions. If there are live sessions, make links to join easy to find and use the same link wherever possible to minimize errors. When things don't work as planned, make it easy for your learners to get help. Be redundant with information. Not all learners will look in the same place. And naming conventions go a long way to help learners remember where they left off. Use a style guide and graphic design conventions to improve wayfinding. Consistent use of color, graphics, and iconography can serve as signposts. Call-out blocks can help separate reading content from activities. Descriptive links and buttons tell users what an action does. Setting up links to open a new window reduces the risk of learners leaving your course accidentally. And progress indicators help learners track where they are, and options to resume where they left off means less time navigating and more time learning. And that wraps up the formal part of the webinar. Before we go to Q&A, we have some news from Onlia to share with you. Today, we are launching a course creator Q&A group on LinkedIn and welcome you to join. Our team will be present to answer any questions you may have, and we also recommend that it be a community that people participate and contribute as well. And then coming soon, Onlia is launching an LX web store to share our knowledge with even more course creators. There will be 3 products to start, 2 workshop series, and a course creator bundle purchasable on the Onlia website. More products will be added in the next few months, including templates, so follow us on social media for the store opening date. And any questions?
Thanks, William. That was a great presentation. Any questions from any of the attendees today? You can type in the chat box if you like, or feel free to unmute yourself. Either or works.
Did you learn anything new? Or did you know? Did you all know all of this already?
Thanks, William. Yes, I learned a lot new, so thank you very much. I appreciate that because I'm currently in the throes of writing content and working on, getting that consistency you talked about. I was interested in, there was a graphic that you pulled up. I believe it was of the home page, and then kind of the roads. There was about 4 roads that came out of the home there. Let me just. I'd like that I like that visual example of where it can branch out from. A lot of the times when I've done flow charts, it seems to go feed down, and I liked how that image, fed up, and it looked like kind of a road ahead. I know you're looking for it, so sorry about that. I think I screenshotted it here so I can share it with you.
All right, I'll stop sharing.
Oh, I think I gotta let Greg share. There you go, Greg. You should be able to share now.
Okay. There we go. Anyways, yeah, I don't have a specific question about it, but I really like as I'm visualizing courses, I kind of was visualizing it as like a top-down thing, almost, and I like that graphic because it looks like it's more positive and forward-moving, and that it's something to attain, like when I've been kind of doing my flowcharts, they've been going down, so it feels like it's kind of you're working a little bit. This seems a little more positive. So anyways, I like that, and I like how that feels towards a learner.
Cool. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I think like this image for me, or kind of the idea behind it, is that your home is really it's almost like the lodge at a ski area. It's the place that you arrive at, and then you go skiing and you go check out that mountain, and then you come back to like okay, I gotta sleep, I gotta eat, I've got to do all this stuff, and then you go out again, and that's in many ways like we talk a lot about learner journeys in our work, and I really feel like the analogy, maybe even the metaphor between mountains and learning, is very apt. Because really you are on a journey, and the course itself is one large mountain, but in many ways to make it easier and to sort of give you kind of build up that confidence, it's a lot nicer to look at several small mountains, leading to that big mountain than it is to look at the big mountain. You're not going to go climb Mount Everest tomorrow, but you might start climbing your local mountains. And so I think the same thing could kind of be used here, and that's where limiting, and limiting the number of options, that a course has, making it, creating this kind of this navigation structure where it's easy to see what those adventures are that you get to look forward to, and then constructing the course in that way does make it a lot more attractive for a learner to kind of see how they fit and where they're going.
Yeah, it's less intimidating, like looking at that, like as a learner, it's like I can see, okay, these are the 4 different things I can do. There's a beginning and an end. I don't have to do them all at once, so it's a nice, I know you mentioned and kind of the course homepage, I believe, about kind of giving a little preview of what's to come, so it feels like that here as well.
I'd also add that, often, so using an LMS is pretty much a must, most of the time. It gives you the ability to track learners' progress. It gives that sort of the membership, the administrative aspects. But a lot of LMSs are designed for everyone. They're not, they have some customization, but they also sort of they create a lot of structure around what that learning looks like. And so, like, when possible, and it's often more expensive, it's often more time consuming and more custom. But when we can actually be in control of the navigation itself, that opens up all kinds of possibilities, because then we can actually work almost purely with desire paths, as opposed to kind of some of the more rigid structures of using an existing platform.
Excellent. Thank you.
William, I got a question here from Jenny Lucas, and she's asking a great question about how do you reconcile the balance between familiarity of design with innovation of design?
It's so I've read a lot about this, and it's sort of, if you're going to do something new, you have to assume that your learners, it's going to be unfamiliar to your learners. A great example of this actually is we did a couple years ago. We simulated software, with Storyline, and we built in tooltips to everything you do on there. And so we broke down every step and actually recreated the all the things you could do with the software and how you would learn it. And then we went and user tested it. And what we learned was nobody knew what to do because they'd never seen an interactive video before. So that this was mind opening to us, because we just assumed, because of something that we use every day, would be familiar to the learners, and it wasn't. And then we asked them, what would you prefer? And even the most novice of learners said, just text. I don't have time to go through an interactive. I need to be able to scan content quickly. And so all that work and effort we did to make something very specialized it was useful, because you could get that really detailed look, but it might have been effort in the wrong direction. And so I would say that if you are looking to do something innovative, you have to assume that your learners, that this is new for your learners, and you have to build that structure for them, and really kind of give them the assistance along the way, this is how you get into this is how this starts, about the navigation and the platform itself. And then always, if possible, and it's often hard to rationalize this, but it will pay off in dividends, is test it with real people. Because we, as designers and design decision makers, have biases, we have blind spots, and we aren't our users, we aren't our learners, and we don't fully understand what their goals are or what those desire paths are. But when they start using the things we build, and if you can sit in and do like an observation session with sort of a think aloud approach, the things you learn will make you uncomfortable, but they'll make your work better.
I'm reminded, because I did an interactive training session once. Again, screenshots with click your way through, but it was a very specific process that we were modeling. And so I only needed to have the correct path through the buttons rather than every which possible combination. There was also an instructor who was guiding the learners. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to learn this procedure. Here's how you do it on the website. Now you can practice. So it was supplemental rather than the key instructional mode. I guess, yeah, it's interesting, because as you were talking earlier, you were talking about, your website should be familiar. The position of objects on your page needs to be familiar and known, but that almost stymies innovation, right? Because if you do it the way that everybody knows, then that's all you ever do.
It's a balance. Yeah, it's a balance. And it's, again, if they're, doing things exactly the same way that other people do, it does mean less learning on the part of the learner to understand how something might work. But there's also there's a whole psychology to design, to the layout of design, to the mechanics of design. And there are, I was telling Bill before this, is just talking about UX in general. And in Don Norman's book, The Design of Everyday Things, he talks about how as adults, and this is like, I think this is like 1990 or 1980, it's somewhere in the past, and this is where some things don't change, is that as adults we're expected to understand how to use about 30,000 different products, in as adults in general. And if we were gonna, sit down and learn how each one worked, we would be, still here at 1 minute each. We would still be here 8 weeks later. And so it's really important to, when you are designing something, to sort of work with mental models that people are familiar with. So I'm not necessarily saying, go build your website after Wikipedia or Twitter or Google or any of these examples where there's a lot of usability testing that's being done, but rather developing an understanding of what patterns are familiar versus which ones aren't will give you a toolkit to work from. And there are other ways you can distinguish that work and differentiate it from other websites. And it doesn't always have to be in the interface of it. It can be through the illustration, the use of illustrations, the use of colors, the use of kind of visual elements that create some of those kind of contrasting elements.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for your question.
William, we've got a question here from Richard. And I'll throw this out to you or to any of our other learning design experts who are with us today. How do you design to prevent user overload? Much of Richard's challenge is due to being locked into a particular CMS and then designing courses based on the structure of that CMS they use and having to push a lot of info into a small window. I assume he means literally that it's like an iframe or some similar design thing that they're working within. Richard, correct me if it's metaphorical and not literal.
No, you are 100% correct. I think I've got like an 800 by 500 pixel window that I need to create online courses and modules for teachers to use. And it's just, so essentially I've had to kind of break the CMS where they said, hey, we've got this functionality that we're not telling you about. And then I go, oh wait, Bootstrap works on here? Cool. So now I can like functionally create something in that little window. But boy, is it hard to like design something where it's actually pleasing for users, because before it was just scroll, 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 scroll. And now it's, how do I keep everything nice and tight?
That's a great question. I can give an answer, but if anyone else wants to jump in on that.
Well, I can. Hi, everybody. I'm Jennifer Delisle. I'm an instructional designer with Monlia. From a learning perspective, or even just a cognitive load perspective, I think the key thing is to really just start with identifying what is critical. I think so often we tend to use a lot of words and include a lot of information that actually, if we really just kind of take a step back and think about, okay, what do these learners or what do these users actually need to know? What are the goals that we need to achieve? And then kind of work backwards. What do they need to know in order for us to achieve those goals at an organizational level or an individual level? And really take it down to just those basics. Then that might help you to reduce the amount of content that needs to be included. And then the other thing is really bringing it back to plain language, like really being quite brutal about like eliminating any unnecessary words and simplifying sentences, because I think most people have a tendency to use 3 or 4 words when one will do, and it really takes a really conscientious editor sometimes to take out some of that stuff that we really just don't even need. I don't know if that's helpful. Those are the 2 things that come to mind off the top of my head. if you want to add to that, William.
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, responsive design if you can. It might be hard depending on the authoring tool you're using, but that window that's 800 by 400. If somebody opens it on their mobile phone, it's gonna be out 300 by by I don't know 400 or something. It's gonna be a lot smaller. So you almost, when you are working with like an LMS, it is this sort of experience of design constraints on a huge level, because somebody's gone in and made a lot of these decisions already for you. So you're limited by kind of how much freeform design work you can do. But one of the things that we're always looking at, and our team kind of has kind of two levels of vision. We have sort of the more traditional graphic designers who look at it from that perspective, and then we have sort of the front end, back end developer view. And so when we look at things like Moodle, it's like you were saying just now, Bootstrap is part of the stack. So if you're working with Moodle, you can actually build in that same kind of layout and functionality using what's already existing there. And so that's really, I think, what I would suggest is, figure out what the constraints are, and then use those as your creative challenge points. And I often, I think it's a common saying that designers love constraints. We definitely do, because it forces us to get really creative. And so, like Jennifer was saying, figure out what's important to show in that space, and then think about how somebody's going to, access that, in different devices, how they're going to get to it. Another thing that kind of comes up a lot, and especially when we use course authoring tools on an LMS, is we'll see dual navigation. And this is cringe level 1,000. Because we're introducing two different types of navigation to access the course content. So in those cases, it's like, I know in Storyline you can do this, and some other ways you can do this as well. You can actually like take off the navigation and create your own, and like the player navigation, and that actually might allow you to get, make that space, that iframe that you're working with, more specific to the platform that it's on, as opposed to fighting with the platform. That was a great question.
Thank you.
So I have a question here from Mike, and he wants you to talk a little bit about what happens to course design with things like inventory courses, where they're adapted year after year. There's many different instructors, and all the instructors have a different idea of what works for me. And maybe we can talk a little bit about how we've worked in that. And I'll just start by saying, Mike, that the example that William showed, the D2L example, is actually a program that we built that was designed specifically for that scenario, where the instructor who wrote the course and delivered the first semester of it might not be the one delivering it sort of onward. And so we did put a lot of thought into how to make it easy for them to alter parts of it, and very difficult for them to alter other parts of it. And I'll let you speak to that, William.
Okay, I'll give a little bit, but I feel like Adriana might have this one pretty well. So the first thing I'll just say is, a big part of the course creation process is one, it's figuring out how to lay out that content, reduce the cognitive overload, use the existing text editor, build in some of that structure. But then another part is the interactives. It's when you get to apply and get to kind of do more of that active learning. And so in the case that Jeff's mentioning just now, we used H5P for that, and that was a suggestion from the university that we were working with. And what's great about H5P is that it's open source. It allows for the client to make edits to the interactives, which is very different from, say, like Storyline or some of the other authoring tools out there. And so that gives that flexibility over time for people to make adjustments, to make changes. And I think that's kind of a key factor for that type of scenario. Adriana, do you want to jump on there?
Yeah, and then I'll pass it to Jennifer because she can add more from an instructional design perspective. I'll just talk about, in many courses that we work on, there is foundational knowledge. And foundational knowledge tends to be very structured and is not, it doesn't change that much over time. So when Jeff was talking about, we made some pieces harder to modify and change, those pieces were usually in the realm of foundational knowledge. Then there is changing knowledge, and then there is putting that knowledge in contextually in terms of stories, in terms of how this applies to you and why you are learning something related to the course. And there are different ways of doing that. One is, again, storytelling from my experience, but we also found that many of the instructors, the new instructors, use the idea of a lesson at the end that they could add, and that they could add and modify each year depending on what was happening. So for example, if it is a course on change management, they will add a story or their own lesson. So there is the foundational knowledge of change management, and then they will add their own lesson around change management in the context of COVID-19 or a pandemic. And that was contextual to what was happening that year. So it is good to differentiate what is the foundational knowledge that is changing less, and what the instructor adds in terms of guidance and contextualizing what is happening. And Jennifer, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, I mean, you've touched on it already, Adriana, but the idea of what we call social presence is so important to learning, that when learners feel like they're learning from a real human, even if it's just all asynchronous content that they're reading on screen, if they feel like they're learning from a person and rather than a computer, then they learn better. They're just more engaged. And so I think instructors, I mean, I'm not completely clear on the kind of situation that you're describing there, Mike, but I think as much as we can encourage instructors to put their own presence into a course, that's going to have a benefit to learning. So if they throw in a story written from an I perspective, a personal anecdote from their experience, that's going to be really powerful for learning. So and any little change that's going to make an instructor feel like they have more ownership of a course, that's going to come through. Learners going to feel that. So I think that's something that we should encourage.
Awesome. Any other questions?
Yeah, so I'll just say if you have any other questions, you can find some contact information on the Onlia website. Feel free to reach out through that, and hopefully we'll see you in the LinkedIn group, and look for an email sometime next week with a link to the video if you want to watch it again and get some of the information out of it. So thanks for everyone for joining. Really appreciate you taking the time to come learn from us. So yeah, hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Thank you, William.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.